really is about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, coming out of your comfort zone. You know, really, that coming out of your comfort zone is really, really important. And I don't know, I've always been willing to come out of my comfort zone. It's quite small, local, you know, somebody's seen you do something, they're saying, can you come and do that in my school? And then more recently, it's kind of conferences, and can you come and speak about an aspect of leadership? So very early on, I experienced some really interesting head teachers, and it was a lesson in what I reflect on now, how not to lead, and people that weren't entrenched in the community and weren't doing everything they could to create the conditions for the kids to succeed. And probably slightly arrogantly at the time, I felt I could do better.
Alhamdulillah, God gave me everything. Alhamdulillah.
You make a choice and say, come hell or high water, I'm going to be this, then you should not be surprised when you are that. And I gave my soul to this game. There's nothing more to give.
Everest is obvious to climb because it's there, it's a mountain. Personal Everest, you can't see it. No one can see it but you. Never give up on a dream.
Just look deep within myself and ask myself how much I want it. What am I here for? Don't lose that desire. I want to unleash the beast.
When I sat here in this crowd, US 93, and saw all these guys, you know, I realized it's there. It's there for the taking if I put the time in.
Be true to the game, because the game will be true to you. If you try to shortcut the game, then the game's going to shortcut you.
Welcome to the game. Today I'm joined by Sajid Gulzar OBE, CEO of Prince Albert Community Trust.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good to be here. But let's just start with, so what does it take to be a CEO? So like, what's the day-to-day kind of like?
It's really varied. There's no real day-to-day pattern. So I mean, one week is different from the next. One half term is different from the next. Sometimes 1 year is very different from the next. So essentially, what the job is oversight of a group of schools, leading a group of people that are obviously key to the running of those schools. So essentially, making sure the quality of education is good enough and the money is well managed. That's kind of essentially, and the kids are kept safe, so safeguarding. So those are the three main components of the role. But within that, there's a myriad of different things. So there's the internal, which is about quality of education, leadership, that sort of thing. Then there's the outward facing, making sure that you're engaging with other schools, other multi-academy trusts, people in other sectors. So this morning, for example, I was delivering a workshop for Warwickshire Police.
Okay.
So every day is different. Yeah.
When did the seminars kind of come in and the workshops, the delivering? Because that wasn't always what you were doing, was it?
No. So I mean, I've
because let's give you some backstory. So you've been in the CEO position for
7 years.
7 years, yeah. So tell me about, like, let's just go from the beginning of like what you thought it would be like, then what it actually is, and then now, like the difference, and what changed over the years.
Okay, well, when I became a head teacher in 2009, being a CEO of a multi-academy trust was a very new thing.
Yeah.
So when I was teaching and I aspired to be a head, the position of CEO didn't exist. You know, all schools were either a local authority had oversight, or they were independent schools, or they were grammar schools. So it was fairly well defined, and the system's much more fragmented now. So with the rise of multi-academy trusts and this new position of chief executive officer of a group of schools, it wasn't something I was aware of when I became a head, really. You know, I knew these things existed, but there wasn't really anything significant locally. And then, you know, as I became an experienced head, and we started working with failing schools, and then around 2015 we converted and became a multi-academy trust, and I became the CEO. So essentially, at that time, I was responsible for 2 schools. I was executive head, so there wasn't really any change overnight in my role. Okay. I was head of 1 school, then I became head of 2 schools. There were differences, but essentially I was responsible for the running of 2 schools. And then as we started growing, I realized fairly early on that you might be able to lead a school as a head teacher in 1 school, 2 at a stretch.
Yeah.
3 is an absolute stretch. Beyond that, the role becomes very, very different. And it's not the same as the role of a head teacher. And I've been lucky enough to evolve with the role and develop with the role. So what the role is now is very different to what it was when I first became a CEO. As I said, when I first became a CEO, it was just essentially a head teacher of 2 schools.
With a different title, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So then, talk to me about the leadership and why give back. So doing the workshops and all that, because that's a separate thing to when you first started.
Yeah.
If you get my drift.
No, of course. So I did a lot of that internally. So you're a head teacher. You do a lot of the CPD, the professional development of staff. As a leadership team. So I was essentially responsible for the leadership development of my leadership team, and then the development of the staff. We're big on people development. Whether you're working in the office or you're a teaching assistant, you're a teacher or a leader. We've always been focused on people development, because if you develop your people and you have the best people, then you get the best quality of education for the youngsters. So a lot of that with my team, and I'm fortunate to be working with some really, really amazing people who are far better at that sort of thing than I am. So a lot of that's internal facing. It's within one school. Then you grow it becomes more schools. Then people hear about you and they ask you to come and deliver stuff. And so recently I've been doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of conferences and that sort of thing. So it's nice to be asked, because you've got something to offer the sector. And that starts off quite small, local. Somebody's seen you do something, they're saying, can you come and do that in my school? And then more recently, it's kind of conferences, and can you come and speak about an aspect of leadership? So one thing that I speak a lot about, that I've spoken a lot about recently, is ethical leadership, particularly given the political situation, the economic challenges that we face. In the public sector, we're having to do more and more with less and less. And the idea that ultimately, for the kids in the school, well, none of that matters to them. We've still got to provide a high quality education, and for young people in underserved communities, that's their one shot, that's their one chance. So regardless of the situation out there in the wider world, we've still got to do the best by them and deliver a quality of education and change their life chances. So what I'm speaking a lot about at the moment is, yes, the challenge is there. Yes, it's more difficult, but ultimately we've still got a responsibility to deliver the best possible education for the communities we serve, because how else are they going to get out of that cycle?
You still got to keep it kind of running, regardless of whatever's happening outside. So
absolutely.
Let's focus on the public speaking aspect for a bit, because how did that kind of grow over time? Because when you first joined, obviously, as you said, as a head teacher, you wasn't really in the picture. So, was that a development stage you went through, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, you kind of, when you first arrive at school as head, you need, and the school was okay. There were a lot of things that we need to improve. So you're very kind of inward facing. You're really focused on the task at hand, and that improved. And we were asked to go and support a school that wasn't doing as well. And you get invited to things. People come and see things in your school. There's a lot of collaboration education.
Would you say it's the case of because you're always inward facing, talking to people and giving seminars? Well, not seminars, but basically giving your input. So then there's for you, was there no difference between, let's say, 10 people or 20 people in a room to 80, 40?
No. It was definitely development. There was definitely a process. So when I first started doing it, I used to get very nervous and
it's only natural. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And then again, I've got really good people around me, so I'd ask colleagues to give me some input, some feedback and things that I needed to improve, and then I'd focus on that one thing. And preparation is really interesting. I always found if I really prepared and really thought about what I was going to say, and if I scripted it out, it was never as effective as if I just kind of went with kind of heart and soul. So I have a structure, and I have things that I'm going to cover, but I don't. In the past, when I've tried to really dictate to myself and constrain myself to a set of words, I really struggle, and I kind of lose the thread. Whereas if I've got a broad, if I've got key things that I'm going to cover, but I haven't restricted myself to the words I'm going to use, that's a lot easier for me. And then there's just little mental exercises that I go through before I start, just to kind of focus. And if I'm nervous, calm myself down. And I'm
very. Can you give an example of one mental exercise?
Well, I just say there's a little dua that I have, and I just, and just really simple things like La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah,
Okay.
just kind of,
like to bring it.
just kind of bring it back and just a little bit of salawat or something, just to kind of take my mind off that, and think of something greater and more powerful, and
like calm your heart rate down, and
all of
get in
that,
the zone.
And then things like that, things like salawat, and a little something like that, a little bit of dhikr is really good at just bringing it all down and putting things into perspective.
Okay. But it's interesting you said earlier about freestyling, to an extent, like obviously you got your overall aim, but then when you get in there, because that's what I do with the podcast, because at the start I was kind of thinking like I remember the first podcast I did with Ashley Bertie. When I come in, I was trying to come in with like loads of different things, like I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say that. But then as you go along, you think of other stuff. Then like you forget your whole flow, and then like it's kind of you get in your own head a bit. You know what I'm trying to say? Because I think I'm the same way. Like I have like overall thing, but then I just kind of freestyle it and we see where we go.
And you respond to what's going on. You respond to
you be adaptable.
Yeah, this morning we had a group of people, and I was able to go off on a tangent based on what people were saying. And I thought that was much more powerful than if I had a script that I was following. So
plus
often,
it comes from the heart as well.
Yeah, it does.
Because you actually believe 100% what you're saying. Whereas if you're revising something or got something memorized, it can come across like, oh, I just read it off somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. And also, if you ever see my slide deck, there's very little content, and it's really. If I've got a bunch of slides, it's reminders for me more than anything, and visuals for people.
Markers, isn't it? Almost.
I'll often use photos of our kids from the schools, that demonstrate a point or a concept.
Like something more provocative, like trying to get the mind engaged.
Instead
of having like loads of text.
I don't want people distracted by text on a slide. I don't want to be distracted by text on a slide. So usually it's a line or two or three, and very broad, and it's much more for me to remind me about the things I want to talk about, rather than dictating to me exactly what I'm going to say.
Because I feel like you keep the audience engaged that way. Because they're obviously engaged with what you're saying rather than obviously the whiteboard.
And that's the feedback I get. The feedback I've got in the past from people when I've asked, when I've tried to kind of deliver a speech, is that it doesn't flow. It doesn't feel as natural, and it doesn't feel as real. As
like human.
Absolutely.
Have you always been responsive to your feedback? Or was there a time where kind of like your ego's a bit up and like, you know what I mean? Because it's only natural. Everyone goes to them stages before you actually learn the lesson.
I think how you respond to feedback very much depends on the culture of the organisation that you're in. So if you've got a really healthy organisational culture, and you see feedback as a gift, and you see feedback for what it is, which is how to make you better, then feedback, the consequences of feedback are always positive. If it's quite a punitive culture where it's the culture isn't healthy, and it's a way for people to criticize you or point out your faults. So often if there's feedback but without any support or direction on how to improve,
instead of what you're trying to say is that someone talking at you rather than talking with you.
Well, not.
No, like what I mean is like talking down. Is that what you mean?
No, it's not even talking down. It's if I said to you, for example, I don't know. We were talking about we were talking about football.
Okay.
And I criticised your defending, right? And I said to you.
You used to do that in the past.
I never criticised your defending.
No, I'm joking.
I think me and your dad, we always watched from the sidelines and never really. I don't know what your dad was like in the car, but my conversation with Ibrahim was always like, well done, son. We'll, but anyway, so if I was criticising your defending, right, and all I did was point out the flaws.
But I never gave you
But I didn't give you constructive feedback in you should have been closer to that. You should don't let that player turn you. That player's really quick. If they turn you, they're gone. If I don't show you how to do it, or if I haven't got a methodology to show you how to do it, me just criticizing you is not going to make you better. If I can't do it myself, show you a video or a demonstration or another player who is doing it, or to show you a good example of it. If all I ever do is I'm out every week you get turned. Like, stop getting turned. Every week you're getting turned.
It doesn't help. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't know how not to get turned by the attacker, and all you get is criticism, then it becomes a negative exchange. But if I say to you, look, you'll be a better defender if you stop the attacker turning you. And here's, maybe if you know the guy's really fast, stand off a couple of yards. You're not touch tight. If I give you the example, and if I demonstrate, whether I can demonstrate it myself or show you, then that's about making you better, and you appreciate that.
Exactly.
Who doesn't want to be better at what they do, right? But if it's, and I've worked in organizations where it's effectively criticism. It's like, here's your feedback, but it's not feedback, it's criticism. It's only feedback if it's constructive and it's about
100%.
And it's about helping you to be better.
And plus, I think it's the delivery of you as well. Like, I think that what we're trying to get at is the delivery in terms of like as in like you gotta show someone a way out, like a way to get better at it.
To get better,
yeah. So that's what I meant earlier when I was like instead of talking at you, talking with you.
And that's where organizational culture is really, really important. So if you're within an organization that's about improving people, right? And that's the culture. That the whole setup here is about me being better at what I do. And this is an element. This is an ingredient of me getting better. Then how you receive it is very different to an organization where it's not about you improving. A level of performance is expected of you, but you've got to do that all on your own. That's a very different experience within an organization.
Yeah, because I feel like togetherness is key. Like, you gotta make it seem like everyone's going on the same mission and everyone's part of a bigger journey. Like when you're on about you do your salawat and you do your dua, then obviously clearly you're talking about something bigger. So you're a smaller cog in a bigger machine. So it's the same kind of basics when you're talking about organizational culture.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. It's about every single person understanding why you're there. One of the things I spoke about this morning to a room full of people who work in the police officers and civilian staff and some senior people there, the assistant chief constables there, and one of my questions to them was, why do you do what you do? What's your why? Because that's really important, because if as a collective group of people there's commonality in our why, who are we, and what are we about? What are we all trying to achieve here? And if that's the same, if there's a common thread, so when we go into a school, it's a school that's been struggling, and we've gone into support. One of the first things that we do is to ask people why are you there? Why are you here? What's the point of you being here? And hopefully, what everybody's going to say at some stage is, well, we're here to make a difference to the kids. And particularly if you're talking about areas like Alum Rock, Lascelles, Handsworth, Aston, where there's a level of underservice of public service to a group of people, be that education, be that whatever service. So you've got people who are put at a disadvantage, not because of any fault of their own or anything they've done wrong, just by accident of geography and birth and all those sorts of things. So hopefully what you're going to get from a group of educators is, well, we're here to make a difference. Well, that's great. We're all here to make a difference. So how are we going to make a difference? How are we going to work together to make that difference? So culture is really important, and that cultural identity of an organization of what you're about, what you're there to achieve is really, really important. And that is about everybody, swimming in the same direction, moving in the same direction together.
So what is your way?
My why is simply that. My why is about making a difference, but that's rooted in social justice, in social equity.
Well, I know, because my second question, my follow-up is, how did you get there? Because you don't realize the why when you're a teenager or like.
No, you don't. But certainly when I was in my early 20s and I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do, and I had a taste of teaching, the impact that you can have in the classroom, and the background that of where.
Well, let's go before that, because obviously you're a kid from Washington.
I am,
originally. So let's Warren Road, innit? So let's take you back. So how does a kid from Washington, Warren Road, realize he's got like a sort of inkling towards teaching?
I didn't until I was probably.
So what did you study?
I was 22.
Okay.
I was 22, so I kind of drifted a bit. I drifted for a couple of years, and then I did a social sciences degree, which focused on psychology. Predominantly, all my modules were psychology modules, and I went into do some work experience at Lee School actually.
Okay.
Because I wanted to get into teaching so that I could become an educational psychologist. But then when I had a taste of teaching as a teaching student, once I was in a classroom, I never thought about educational psychology again because of the
What did you think about psychology first? Or was it just a thing?
No, because it was that was the main component of my degree.
Before that, so why choose that degree? Like, was it just because?
That's a long story.
Okay.
That's a long story. I kind of ended up there.
Okay.
Like I said, I drifted from it. I ended up.
Yeah. Okay.
I just these things happen, right? So maybe in a autobiography someday.
Okay.
But I kind of drifted a bit, and then I ended up.
Okay, so you ended up becoming a teaching student at Lee School. And then
I did some work experience there.
Okay.
But I spent a year in Nechel's at Cromwell Schools as a teaching student. And I was actually rejected from every institution in the West Midlands for teacher training. And at that time in Birmingham, it was called the Minority Ethnic Route into Teacher Training, the Merit Scheme.
Okay.
And there's a lot of great educators in Birmingham today who would not be in teaching had it not been for the Merit Scheme. So, we weren't getting into teacher training, some really, really great people. So, it was either us or it was them. My conclusion, looking back, it was them.
Yeah.
Those gatekeepers weren't letting us in.
Okay.
And I qualified through this program, and part of the program was spending a year in a school before I did my PGC, and that I spent in Nechel's at Cromwell School, which is a really, really good grounding. But what I learned, and some really, really challenging circumstances these young people are in, really challenging. And I learned the impact that you could have like, straight away, just by engaging and by understanding where these kids are coming from. So if you go back to my childhood, and we didn't have a lot, but none of us had a lot. We're in a community where late 70s, early 80s, within our community, it was fairly normal for kids to be wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, or they were hand-me-downs from their older brothers and sisters, or holes in your shoes, or patches on your trousers. That was all of us. It was
normality.
That was normality. So poverty was fairly normal. We didn't think of it as poverty then. That was our lived reality. Whereas certainly in the mid to late 90s, when I went back to school as a teaching student, the gap was much wider. So the levels of poverty were more stark, but then there were more that had a bit more. Okay. So the gap was.
So the comparison was bigger.
Yeah. And it just felt like, if I think back to my school days, it just felt like the social challenges were greater. There was a lot going on in Nechel's at the time. And funny actually, there's a young man called Casey Bailey, who's the poet laureate for Birmingham, who was in year 5 in one of the classes that I was a teaching student in. Okay. And he's now, he does the poetry for the intro for Peaky Blinders. He's got an honorary doctorate. He's doing some amazing things as a son of Birmingham. And if I think back to people like him who've really excelled, but came from really, really challenging circumstances. What you find when you go into these places is there's a perception that people have about the inner city and what goes on, and I'm sure you've heard these things about what you find in the inner city schools, and the kids don't behave and they don't want to work, and the parents aren't interested. And actually, it's the complete opposite. The complete opposite is the truth, and all the kids in those schools want is to be believed in, and for somebody to create the conditions for them to succeed. And that, I learned that very, very early. If you create the conditions for children to succeed, children will succeed.
No, it takes a village to raise a child.
No, 100%, 100%. And a school is a village, So when I started going into school, I realized this is really powerful stuff, and it was something connecting with kids was, I realized, something I was good at. I realized it was alhamdulillah, it was a talent. I found my thing. Up until that point, I didn't know what my thing was.
You found a calling.
I found, well, not a calling, but just something I was good at. Something I was really good at. I can do this. It's tough, but I'm good at this stuff, right? And then I qualified as a teacher, and literally every single year for the first 5 years that I was teaching, I was given the class that nobody else wanted to teach. The slightly wild ones, and the ones that the unteachable ones. And I always managed to do a good job with them. Relatively speaking, I always managed to and that was through relationships. That was through being really interested in what motivated them and what made them tick. And each one was different. And engaging with the parents, and and often if there were parents of South Asian origin. And the parents were first generation immigrants, being able to speak their language, that was a massive plus. And
relatability.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I had lots in common with these kids, and I could really relate to them. So, and then I started thinking I could have, if I was in leadership, I could have a much bigger impact. So the goal was always, if I become a head teacher, then I'm responsible for the whole thing.
Okay, but how did that come about? Because that's not for everyone. Because most people would either they be comfortable within, like, they're making a difference on the grassroots level in terms of like with the kids, like face to face in the classrooms. So why think above that? Like, what's the mentality behind it?
Do you know, so very early on I experienced some really interesting head teachers, and it was a lesson in what I reflect on now, how not to lead. And people that weren't entrenched in the community and weren't doing everything they could to create the conditions for the kids to succeed. And probably slightly arrogantly at the time, I felt I could do better. I thought I could do better. In X number of years when I've learnt my craft, and I can do better than this. So it was a little bit naive. It was a little bit, and it didn't quite work out like that. But ultimately, it was about, how can I have a greater impact than the 30 kids in my class? As a primary school teacher, I can influence and impact on 30. How can I impact on 400, 500, 600, 700? How can I work with a group of people to create the conditions for 700 kids to succeed rather than the 30 that I'm responsible for?
Okay, so was it that passion that kind of took you further?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, people describe it as passion, and there's always,
So what would you describe it as?
I suppose I'd now describe, looking back at it, I describe it as passion, but you don't, you don't necessarily label who and what you are.
Yeah, at the time.
Right? At the time, I mean, this is how I roll, this is how I engage, and this is who I am. And
so for you, it was just kind of like, it was just the next step. Like, it was just.
Well, it was just me. It's just that's how I engage with teaching. And people who describe, you're really passionate teacher. You're really passionate about the kids. Well, why wouldn't you be? It's these are 30 human beings that you've got for in your presence for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 39 weeks in a year. That's a significant amount of time that you're spending in the same space as 30 human beings. Why? You've either got to be passionate about that, or you need to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're in the wrong job. Yeah. So then, talk to me about the development, because you just mentioned there that there was kind of like, it wasn't as easy as you developing and then just straight in, because obviously there's always gonna be knockbacks in the journey. Yeah.
So, and what I know now is in the healthier schools, culturally, organisationally, I flourished, and the ones that weren't healthy, I didn't. And all along the way, there were people that helped me to become better as a teacher, and then as a leader. So I think mentorship is really, really, really important.
Well, you said mentorship, but like, let's explore that a bit, because especially when you're younger, it's harder to take on advice, because you think like, I know it all, and like you kind of mentioned it there a little bit when you're on about like, I could do your job better. So then how do you, number one, how do you take on advice and then take on the right advice?
But equally, you recognise the people that aren't very good, but you recognise the people that are very good.
Okay.
And in an unhealthy organisation, there are still great people. And you gravitate towards those great people and say, that you've really got this. How are you doing it? What are the component parts? What are the bits that I can improve? So
have you always been good at that, networking, or like just having a discussion with? Because like what people gotta realize is that, because the way you're saying it is like it's easy, like because obviously for you it's easy, but what I mean is like just even trying to speak to someone and get that bit of feedback and knowing the right ones, like.
I suppose been comfortable for you. I've got a lot better at networking outside of education. That's been my learning over the last 3 or 4 years. That was something I was very kind of on the back foot with. I didn't, and nobody believes this, but I'm a natural introvert. I'm not, and I've had to learn to be, to create this persona of confidence and being able to go up to people. And I've had to really, really learn how to do that and push myself and and take myself out of my comfort zone. Again, there have been some really good mentors around me, particularly when I became a CEO. And within education, I found that fairly straightforward, fairly easy. And then to become more outward facing and benefit from the
different people,
world, the schools benefiting from the business world and other sectors. I've really had to, and I've had some really good people around me from outside of education have pushed me. I've been helped and advised, and people I've learned from. So, people find it difficult to believe when I say I find that. I still find it a challenge sometimes.
Okay.
But I forced myself to do it, and I'm used to doing it now.
Well, what's that journey been like? Because I went through a similar thing. Like, obviously, mine was a lot earlier than you.
Yeah.
But like for the last 3 years, I've done a lot of stuff. So I'm still not good at it now in terms of like networking with people outside of any circle. So you know what I mean? If it's a circle within a circle, then I can relate to them. But if someone totally like a total stranger that I know of online, but I don't really know them like that, it's hard for me to kind of like ask them like, for advice or like.
Well, I've got 26 years on you, man. So
but what I'm trying to say.
What I'm saying, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And
but talk to me about yours.
And you've got plenty of time. You've got plenty of time.
No, I know that, but I'm on about because what I'm trying to get at is from you being a natural introvert. So how did you kind of like?
It's about
break it down.
It's about pushing yourself. It's about recognizing that there's something that you could be better at, and it really is about forcing yourself to do something. So you're in a room, there's a group of people. How'd you go and join that? You don't know any of them. How'd you go and join that conversation? And the first time you do it, it's really hard. The second time, it's really hard. But you've done it 4 or 5 times, it gets just that little bit easier.
Okay.
And
so
then before practice. Honestly, practice. So and I've had to do a lot of that. You walk into a room and they're not educationists. They're people from the world of business. They do this. 3 or 4 times a week, a dozen times a month or whatever. It's a different world, and it really is about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, coming out of your comfort zone. Really, that coming out of your comfort zone is really, really important. And I don't know. I've always been willing to come out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
And sometimes it takes me a while with certain comfort zones. But if I know I've got to do it, eventually I'll take myself out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Now for me, like I don't know about you, but I kind of do something uncomfortable away from people. Like so, for example, like before I started the podcast and the studio, we went paragliding. In Turkey, and we jumped off the basically a mountain. So like I've never done it before, but I was like, I gotta do that. So then I know that I can do something else. Yeah,
you wouldn't get me doing that.
Nah,
you wouldn't get me doing that.
Okay, so you're a bit different. Okay. So how do you like? So do you just go within it, like?
It's about the job, isn't it? It's about I've got a huge responsibility, and I'm in a hugely privileged position where the work that I do has an impact on thousands of kids and hundreds of staff. Right? Okay. So that's a responsibility, and that's my job, and that's what I'm paid to do. Part of that, an element of that, is being really good with people. Another element of that is to be really good with people outside of my sector. Because what does that do? That creates opportunities for my staff, for my students, for my colleagues. So if I stayed within my comfort zone,
let's say within one box, basically.
I'm not doing my job, right? And I want to do my job to the best of my ability. So there's an element to my job that kind of I'm staying away from because it's not comfortable. And it did take people to tell me, look, you need to do more of this. This is part of your job. So it's not like one day I woke up and thought, I'm going to tackle that. It is people, good people who are around me saying, you need to do more of this. This is your role, and it's not somebody else's job; it's your job. So, I don't like doing it. I'm uncomfortable with it. Well, you have to do it. Whether you're uncomfortable, you've got a responsibility, and that's an element of your role. Okay, how do I do it? Okay, well, we'll create opportunities for you to do it. And I'll show you how to do it, and I'll help you how to do it. So I've been lucky that I've got people around me, which is why mentorship's important. It's really important to have mentors for different things. For the things that you want to improve in. And there might be 5 different things that there are 5 different mentors that are really, really good at bringing that out of you. It's not just about one person. It's about different people who are.
But it goes back to what you were saying about it takes a village to raise a child, but almost like it takes a village to raise anyone at a certain level.
Yeah. You know, the power of human connection is really, really, really important. And to get the best out of others, to get the best out of yourself, relationships are really, really important. And
we're talking about the pressure. So when you're on about it's a responsibility, and then what's the pressure like on the bad days where you might have got something wrong, this gone wrong, like, because it always happens. That's part of the journey. But.
Yeah, it does, and I get asked. Interestingly, I get asked a lot about pressure. Obviously, you know, the responsibility of 6 schools and all that, and things that lessen the pressure are having a great team. So, you know, if it's contingent on you and you alone, it's always going to fail. So, you know, I've got a great group of people around me, leaders, really distributed leadership, people taking responsibility, people who are experts in the field. So that lessens the pressure. Having real balance in your life. So it's not the be all and end all. You know, you've got your family, you've got things that you do outside of work, and having real balance. So no one thing in your life becomes the be all and end all. You know, and understanding that you're a custodian. You know, I'm a custodian of an organization, a CEO. That organization will be there long after I've gone.
Okay. Yeah,
and there'll be somebody else in my position.
Yeah.
But ultimately, for my family, you know, as a father, as a son, as a husband, you're far less replaceable than as a CEO, right? Or as a
was that
always
within your mindset? Because obviously it's easy, because I've met loads of CEOs and loads of business people, and they always say that, like, don't be within the fabric, in terms of like don't let it be the be all end all of that organization. But it's always the case after the fact. Maybe 5-10 years down the line.
It's really difficult when you're
in the growth phase.
As a head teacher, for example, you know, education, as I'm sure with lots of other sectors, can be all consuming. And again, you need people around you to remind you. And I was very lucky that I had some really, really great mentors, and I do the same now with my colleagues and staff, where, you know, you remind, and I've said this many times to colleagues, you know, if you can't come to work again tomorrow, I'll find a replacement.
Okay.
But your kids, your partner, your parents, you know, you're not replaceable. At work, we're all replaceable. But within our families, amongst our friends, we're not. We're unique. So, you know, where's the greatest loss going to be? If I can't go to work tomorrow, the organisation will carry on. There'll be a new CEO, and the organisation will carry on.
But what I'm trying to say is, how do you find that balance? Because when you're saying it's all consuming in one end, but when you're growing and you're building, going from school to school, as you said, you started off with 2 schools, then you got further and further. That workload's getting bigger and bigger. So then obviously you got your own objectives of like helping as much young people as possible, youngsters, and then you got objectives of your family, looking after it. But when you're growing, it's hard to navigate both and not be within the fabric.
Listen to people around you, listen to your family, listen to your friends. You know, if you're not seeing your friends and you're not seeing your family and you're not spending time with your kids, you know, when you know the hours I spent on a Sunday with your dad watching you and Ibrahim play football. You know, and that was balance. That's balance. You're in the week, you're a head teacher 5 days, and it's really tough. But actually, on a Saturday morning's training and a Sunday morning, and what do? We stand around talking about football and the world, and it's completely removed from you know. So that sort of thing's really, really important. One, it helps to build a relationship with your kids, but also you're completely removed. So it's having things in your life, whatever it is, be, you know, faith, a pastime, family, friends, whatever it is, just making sure that you're making time for other things. And sometimes you need people to say that to you, you know. And again, a question I asked of leaders within our organisation, and I ask it often, is, what's your work-life balance? What are you doing outside of work? That's nothing to do with work. That helps you to maintain the balance.
So what's next?
Retirement.
You can't do it forever.
I think you know, I'm nearly 50. I've done this for a long time. I've probably got, I don't know, 10 years in me tops. I think, you know, I'll be nearly 60 then. So and if I have got 10 years left, I'm in the final phase. You know, I've been in education for 25 years. Another 10.
Yeah, so 35.
You know, inshallah makes it 35.
Inshallah.
So if I've done 25 and I've got 10 left, I'm in the final quarter, you know, or whatever the fraction is, whatever fraction 10 is of 35. You know, it's about a third, isn't it? It's about a third, just over. So, or just less, sorry. My maths is rubbish. But you know, it's I mean,
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, either way, I'm in the final phase. You know, and it's realizing that, and you know, and you know, you've got to be able to make time for other things, and life isn't just about work. It's about family, and it's about, you know, your kids growing up, and you know, and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
No, I'd love to get you back on sometime, but it's a great podcast, man. Appreciate you coming on.
That was good.